Hopefully I'm going to land on a point that I'm trying to make, but I tend to take a lot of detours and speak in a lot of nuance, so bear with me. I'll start here. In business, one of the things that we say all the time is saturation is a myth. Most of your competition sucks. If you have a valuable product or service to provide to the market in health or in wealth or in relationships, whether that's in the coaching program space that I've worked in for the last 7+ years, or it's, a tallow balm that you want to come to the market with, or some sourdough you want to trap, or an ebook, or a community, or an app, or a service like consulting or coaching, whatever it is, right? We say, saturation is a myth. Most of your competition sucks. Nobody can do it the way you want to do it, et cetera, et cetera. That is no longer the problem, in my opinion. So that's kind of what I'm here to talk about, because now we're in the attention economy. And I think that there's no longer a difference between the online and offline worlds. I think that there's no longer a difference between personal development and business development. And if these things were already things that you thought were true, I think they're even more true now with the acceleration of everything with AI and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk about the solutions to those things, and how everything has changed, right? It's not that we're competing in a saturated market. It's that we're competing in a saturated attention economy. The core problem isn't that there are too many products, services, or coaches in the market. It's that human attention has become the scarcest resource on planet Earth, even though people are constantly paying attention. Constantly. Like, we are in an attention famine. So now it's become a battleground for both buyers and sellers, right? For people selling something, their issue is, I need to come up with ways to stand out in a crowded marketplace. My message is either going to cut through or it's going to get buried in the noise. The influencer or the coach that I'm promoting is either standing out or they look the same as everyone else. Back in the day, marketing used to assume that if you have a good product and decent messaging, you could find your audience, right? Now that's a baseline. Now that is the new baseline. A lot of people have a good product or service, and a lot of people know how to come up with decent messaging. In fact, they can just ask AI to come up with the messaging for them, right? So the real question is now, can you capture and hold attention, not only in general, but long enough to build trust with your audience and demonstrate value that they need and form like a bond with them, essentially, right? And that shifts everything. First of all, online and offline. There's no meaningful difference between that anymore. Your high quality local mom and pop restaurant is going to be paying in opportunity costs if all of their competitors in the local restaurant scene are getting more attention and bringing in more business than they are, because maybe they are still in that outdated, like, starving artist mentality where they think attention and money are inherently demonic. So they avoid promoting their business and getting any attention, even though on some level they know that you don't pay a restaurant a visit with your time or your money without paying them attention first. They have a really negative association with all the attention-hungry people and promoters on the internet. So they want no association with it, and it's costing them time and money. And they either don't care or they just haven't understood. They haven't been sold on the idea of why that's helpful for them to feed their families, right? Another example, your potential client researches you online before ever if they know you're going to be on a call, like, they'll research you first, right? Or maybe you meet somebody at a networking event. Sorry to say that like such a jerk. you're going to look that person up online after. You're going to do some research into them, right? You check somebody's social media after you get their business card. You Google their name before you refer them or whatever it is. You watch their content. This integration of online and offline world, or word of mouth, right? People can be completely offline with their life and then log on to Yelp and contribute to the online word of mouth, right? And put a 1-star review that really drags down the total ratings of a restaurant or a company. There's also the bias of people like love to bitch on reviews more than they like to share positive reviews, but that's a whole different rabbit hole I'm going to try to avoid going down, right? My point is, online and offline, there's no meaningful difference between them anymore. This integration of online and offline world means every touch point needs to be in alignment, at least mostly, not perfectly. The version of yourself that you present on Instagram needs to match who you are in person. Your LinkedIn resume needs to actually reflect your skill set in your actual work philosophies and moves. Your ad creatives even need to authentically represent the experience someone will have with that product or service or coaching program. Say, for example, in the old days, you could get away with being like, oh, I want to help people get healthy. Let me target this avatar. My avatar is busy professionals between the ages of 40 and 60. In the old days, that worked. Now you need to go even deeper, and you need to talk. Maybe it would be helpful to target the pain point of, my success has come at the cost of deep bonds with my family. If your marketer is so burnt out and busy that not only do they have no creative bandwidth, think of ad creatives, but they are so burnt out and busy that they avoid that pain point within themselves, they are going to also avoid that pain point in their idea for marketing. And then one of the emotional elements that you could use in your ads to tap on to bring people into that offer, where you take care of busy professionals and you genuinely help them get healthier and integrate better, elements into their overall quality of life. Your ad guy, his personal inner work bottleneck is now become your business problem, right? A lot of coaches struggle because a lot of coaches and influencers and online businesses, products and services, etc., they struggle to try to separate professional from and authentic, right? They don't realize that this incongruence creates total friction between building trust. And this is something I've been like a personal huge offender of. This is why I can talk about it, right? I've compartmentalized those things, and it created blind spots because these things are not separate. They're both elements of me, right? So the core thing is me. And when there's a lot of friction between those two areas, whether real or perceived, then it's hard for those areas to trust each other because they're not working together. There's a lot of separation between them. So in the attention economy, authenticity isn't just a nice to have. I just posted an Instagram about this that involves some really old tweets about authenticity. It's a must have. It's a competitive advantage because it eliminates the cognitive load of trying to figure out who you really are. Right? Now, what does this mean? This means the wheat is separating from the chaff. People who've scaled an influencer audience using, if you've ever seen the movie Avatar, I feel on one of my other videos with Pat, I talk about this concept where people have almost a parasocial relationship with their own identity. They've used an avatar, a digital avatar, to live a second life through this like more idealistic, perfected version of them. And now they've scaled, so an influencer as an example, now they've scaled an audience with something that isn't authentically them and can't authentically grow with them, right? And on the extreme end of that, it's like super, super fake. Like now there's full out AI influencers who look and sound real and they're profiting 6-7 figures, right? And even I can't tell. And I feel like I have a pretty above average radar for artificial intelligence due to the nature of my work. So authenticity is now the cutting edge, right? It's no longer just a nice to have. You need it. So what does that imply? That means personal development is your ceiling. Because here's an uncomfy truth. Most marketing gurus won't tell you this either. your marketing will never exceed your personal development. The ceiling of your marketing effectiveness is determined by the ceiling of your self-awareness, your emotional intelligence, your ascension, so to speak, your genuine belief in your value, how unflinching you are, not because you don't feel fear or nerves or shame, but can you actually confront the tricky, interesting problem of that fine line between showcasing this product or service in the best light and not being deceiving when it comes to the risk of overpromising and under-delivering. That's a really tricky zone, right? And it's when you have to walk very, very carefully now that there's so much lack of trust in the market. Because one little slip up, one human error can cause you to lose people's attention or actively discredit you, right? So service level stuff is failing already. I would say it's about to fail, but it's already failing. So it's not that ad creative techniques are bad. It's not that money is bad. It's not that funnel optimization is bad. It's not that copy frameworks are bad. It's just that they're treating symptoms. They're not really treating the root cause. If you don't genuinely believe in your value, if you don't genuinely provide value, if your salespeople don't genuinely do that, if your marketing isn't in touch with that, it shows up in your messaging. You can overpromise to compensate for insecurity. You can copy other people's voices and be a knockoff instead of doubling down on your own, whether it's, the influencer or the coach or whatever it is, or the culture of that community, right? Because some things are a great solution, but you're just not a culture fit. So then you would be just miserable and then you wouldn't use the solution. You can avoid vulnerability. That creates real connection, like the pain point example I gave earlier. You can focus on very basic wisdom. You can focus on features instead of benefits or transformation because you're not connected to the impact. Like when I start talking about the impact of something, I just get fired up, right? Because it's real. And I can't go there when I'm talking about a solution with somebody unless I genuinely believe in it. Like I'll genuinely talk to my mentors and be like, hell, NetRevenue is a company I work with. Next month, it'll be a year with them. Ben is somebody that there's a lot of baselines we don't have to cover with each other, right? He has very high emotional intelligence. He's very self-aware. He's a great leader. He knows how to handle women very, very well. It makes him good at his job because we work in a very co-ed space, which I used to think was the norm because that's how I grew up. I've always worked in co-ed groups everywhere, but the weirdos online have made me realize that that's not a normal baseline for everybody. Anyways, in terms of, surface level elements and the deeper reasons that something might not work out or become a liability within marketing, within business, within sales, within personal relationships, like whatever it is. The attention economy is pushing inauthenticity aside, right? Like it's making lack of authenticity invisible. So people can sense when someone is performing rather than being true, even if it's flawed. In a world of infinite options, we're the best people are scrolling past anything that feels manufactured. And that's not to say performance is inherently bad, right? When I learn a dance routine and then I go on stage to dance and I put on a performance, I can genuinely have dance skills, even if I was following a routine, right? That also means that maybe if I forget the dance move for this 6 seconds of the song, I can deviate, still keep up with the rhythm and not take away from the show. So there's a lot of nuance to performance too. Performance isn't inherently evil. Just like money is not inherently evil, bartering value for money is not inherently evil. It's just within the certain context, certain things get triggered. But authenticity is the point. I keep going on long tangents. I've been thinking so much about marketing, how this affects marketing, right? Personal development and unlocking marketing effectiveness, like self-awareness creates niche clarity. Like the deeper you understand your own journey, if you're an influencer or a coach, your struggles, your transformation, then the more precisely you can identify and speak to others on that similar path, right? Generic messaging happens when coaches haven't done the inner work to understand their unique perspectives and experiences. And even if they have that self-awareness, they're so averse to it that they can't own it and use it to everyone's benefit, right? I'm gonna start doing this even more online, even though I've done it a lot already. Not a lot to the degree I could, but I'll dig into this in the next video. Anyways, emotional intelligence and almost like cringe tolerance with yourself, that enables the depth of your resonance with others. Your ability to create ad creatives, for example, and to stop the scroll is directly proportional to your ability to feel and articulate the emotional experience of your ideal client. And your ideal clients are usually, if not always, past versions of yourself. You're a walking testimony to a level above them in health, wealth, or relationships. And that gives you the inherent authority to help them get to your level, right? That not only requires market research, where you find the metaphorical watering holes at which your ideal clients and avatars are hanging out, but also, if you're at that watering hole, you're going to also have competitors who are hunting for those avatars too. So why might they choose you over somebody right next to you at that watering hole who seems to be helping solve the same problem? Your authentic personality and vibe and the way they feel talking to you and working with you. And that is not just market research. That's emotional attunement with yourself and with the people that you can help, which comes from your own emotional and self-development and self-awareness, right? Genuine confidence comes from magnetic positioning. So, and I mean that quite literally and figuratively, right? When a person knows their value when they walk into a room, they can take polarizing positions without being desperate, right? Same exact thing with an ad creative, for example. If you are so insecure about your offering or whatever that you can't call out objections without worrying that the defensiveness is going to get rid of people in your market, then you're going to avoid finding the people that are for you, right? If you don't repel people, you won't attract people. Because if you attract everyone, you're basically attracting no one. And that can involve like sharing things that are vulnerabilities or behind the scenes elements without insecurity, right? The founder of NetRevenue, Ambro, shout out to Ambro, he shared something in Slack today that was very much behind the scenes of exec, right? Now, because I've worked with a lot of leaders of companies and businesses and stuff like that, there are things that I can appreciate about his position that not everybody can appreciate, not because they're not smart or empathetic or wonderful, simply because of lack of exposure to the emotional challenges of being a founder that everybody from the outside looking in would be like, oh, wow, he's got the money, he's got the women, he's got the cars, he's got the friends. Like, you have all the solutions that I'm trying to solve for. But he has a different set of problems, right? So one of the great ways to undercut addressing that is he shared a moment of transparency with us who work with him. And that takes confidence, right? That takes trust in, hey, this is going to build trust because I'm sharing something that's not ideal to hear. And also, I'm on some level trusting that if this repels you, then we're either going to have an opportunity to address that, or I'm just going to lose you as somebody that works with me and my company, and maybe we don't belong working with each other. That's a professional transparency that takes place in leadership, the same way that can be lacking in marketing, the same way that can be lacking in personal relationships, right? If you have enough elephant to address with your friend or your partner, I know some people don't like the term partner, then you can elephants are super heavy. I've talked about this a lot online too. I love the expression clear the air, because this transparency and authenticity that I'm talking about when it comes to your marketing failing, it's the same thing in your personal relationships, right? Elephants are heavy. You need to address them. It's almost like that weight is on your chest. So when you address it, you clear the air and you can breathe easier after. Same thing. Address the elephants with your prospect if you're a salesperson. Address the elephants with your colleagues if you're in business. Address the elephants with your personal relationships if they're important to you or if they need to be, right? It's not even without insecurity. Every human, no matter where they are in the totem pole or what domain we're talking about, has self-doubts, insecurities, problems. To think that they don't just because you're looking at them through one lens and you're comparing that lens does not mean it's inherently decontextualizing to isolate a variable, compare you with them, and then think that leaves a comprehensive conclusion, right? Anyways, I'm going off on another tangent about how personal development is important to marketing and effectiveness, but this is really the point. You need to get specific beyond just demographics, because emotional precision is a banger, you know? Like, it's not like external characteristics don't matter if you were to target an audience for their demographics. But what's a layer deeper than that? Internal experience, right? this is the same. So if you're to say marketing targeting is ineffective when it's just based on external characteristics rather than internal experiences, then and you need to niche down when it comes to specific emotional states and life transitions, and you need to create content that makes someone stop and think, how do they know exactly what I'm going through? That level of precision only comes from coaches and businesses who have deeply explored their own emotional landscapes and can recognize similar patterns in others, right? And that's exactly the same amount of depth that you need to have when it comes to the authenticity of not only you as a person and your marketing getting that across, but also your business and your value or your product, right? If your product or service is not gold backed, then you are going to fail in this. Not you're going to fail, you're probably already failing. And that's not, I'm not saying you need to be perfect, but if people, another big issue is we have such a trust famine. Scott, who is also on NetRev exec, he called it a trust famine earlier. That was such a good term. And it's so true. And part of that is associations. Now people have a really, really negative association with marketing and sales because they've either bought into something that overpromised and underdelivered or that was a straight up scam. So now they think that the tool that people use is inherently bad and it might not be the gateway to something that's good. And even if they can appreciate the fact that not all solutions that are being marketed to them are bad, you know, it still isn't capturing their attention enough for them to be willing to carve out time to really invest in that, right? It's also crazy because there's so much to consider. Like any person who sold anything can, if you ask them, list 5 or 10 objections that you've run into in your career. Any of us could do it. If there are objections that you can't handle, not in a negotiation level, but on an actual deliver value level, then you might avoid addressing that subconscious resistance, right? Objections aren't just logical concerns. They're emotional barriers rooted in experiences we've had, associations we have in our mind, limiting beliefs, fears. So saying things that address those objections at a deeper level requires you having worked through those things on a deeper level within your product or service or within your own self. If you're doing it for real, right? If you're not just handling objections as a salesperson on a surface level, conversational level. And if you have, you probably beneath that level have a lot of resistance and fears. But when you've done your own work around those blocks, like limiting beliefs around money, imposter syndrome, fear of visibility, then you can speak to these with authentic authority and authentic compassion rather than just surface level, script rooted reassurance, right? And same thing in marketing. You know, you can address resistance around these areas that you aren't avoiding yourself. And that process, even me just talking about this, right? Let's get super meta for a second. Even me, oh my God, it's almost 30 minutes already. I'm going to shut up soon. Even me just talking about this helps build trust on a certain way, right? And I'm not, this is kind of like a behind the scenes yap of a process, right? My thinking process as somebody who's in this world of people who sell you shit online, it builds trust around, if you trust me, then you might trust NetRevenue because I'm referencing people on the leadership team at NetRevenue, which I trust. So by extension, you might have more reason to trust them because I'm saying something about them, right? This is what was almost just set me on a whole another tangent. But I'm talking about the tool, trust building, right? And how am I doing that? Authentic transparency and kind of this behind the scenes thing that it tends to be my nature. But if you need to nurture it more, like it's something you already have, you could tap into. And if there's something there that like you're hiding, then that's the real problem that you need to address. Not the fact that transparency is a reliable gold-backed trust builder in a low trust market. And let's also not to mention, like, even if you are inherently trustworthy, if you don't have a level of comfort with transparency, then that's going to directly impact your self-acceptance and your confidence in your methods and in your truths and your stories. So if you haven't developed, whether you're a coach or a business owner or a product or a service or a marketer, whatever it is, if you haven't developed enough emotional security and you struggle with that level of openness, You know, on some level, that's okay. On another level, this is going to be an increasingly prevalent ceiling for you if you are aiming to stand out online, right? Taking strong positions, even if they're not that strong, but in your world, you think it's like a big deal. Sorry to sound like a little insensitive to that. It requires internal clarity about, your philosophies, what's going on inside the business, what's going on inside yourself, especially in a saturated market where generic positioning is getting ignored and polarizing positions work. But even polarizing positions can lead to lack of trust, right? Because they only work when they're authentic expressions of your developed worldview, not controversial statements that you've posted somewhere just designed for rage bait or for attention, because that's also creating a new sophisticated level of lacking trust in the market. Personal development gives you that internal foundation that you can take positions based on conviction rather than just strategy. You're speaking from a real gold-backed authentic place, even if you're polarizing. It's just polarizing is not the aim, or it can be, but the point is it's authentic, right? That's what gold backs it. It's very anti-guru-guru-ness, right? It positions you as different, not because you're saying something that hasn't been said before, or you're selling something that's not being sold. Everybody wants to feel special, but genuinely, like, there's nothing new under the sun. That is still true, at least for now. You're different because you're one of one in terms of there is no other you. So what makes you you? I care more, and I'm actually offering something that's not a scam, and I'm more experienced, and I have more education than you, and I have more testimonials than you. That doesn't capture attention anymore because everyone claims the same shit. Everybody knows everybody's used that. Real differentiation comes from understanding and articulating your unique perspective, your approach, your value, and that really requires deep self-knowledge now more than ever. And that, on both the sell and buy side, it's the only thing that really you are going to stand out with. And curate, right? Don't just beat a dead horse. Don't find one thing that you're comfortable sharing and then use it 50 times over 5 years and wonder why it's expired, right? You need to stay dynamic. You need to stay ascending and growing. If you stop growing, then everybody who continues growing surpasses you, not because they stepped on you, but because that's just a side effect of people ascending and you not ascending anymore, right? So yeah, it's like we're almost at the 30-minute mark, so I'm gonna shut up now. The point is, we're an attention economy. The saturated market is not the problem. It's forcing a really painful correction, which is everybody needs to become more authentic. Everyone needs to become more genuinely valuable. Everyone needs to become genuinely more skilled and continue growing. And those who do the inner work on a core, deepest level to develop both their craft and their value and themselves are all finding that standing out is not a marketing challenge. It's just a side effect of who you become. It's a natural success, in standing out is a natural expression of your authenticity. Whereas everyone who's tried to stand out for reasons that didn't go deep enough are struggling. It's even causing self-doubt in people who have gone deep enough because they're like, maybe they're over-relying on external locus of control more than they're trusting themselves, and that might be the thing that changes everything. So wow, that was a 30-minute riff. Holy shit. I'm gonna try to be more consistent with YouTube now. Again, I don't like talking about things before I've done them, but I guess now I've done this first comeback video, so I can talk about it now. Please follow for more. I'm gonna be talking about a lot of shit, and we'll get better and better with not yapping as much. Although that's very authentic to me. Like, I'm a big yapper. So maybe I'm just supposed to lean into that and double down on my authenticity. Practice what I preach. All right, much love, guys. Also, need I remind you, it's halftime. It's freaking June. We're halfway through the year. So if what you've been doing hasn't been working, the worst, another thing, shout out to Ben again. The worst thing you can do is nothing. He always drops that definition of insanity, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. The whole market is having to learn that lesson right now. We said it in our in our like team call, I got super meta in my mind about it. And I wanted to raise my hand and respond to whatever question he was asking, but I just went down a rabbit hole. Because I think the market is going through this right now. You guys keep using the same shit, and you think that something's going to magically change. And if anything, it's just getting worse. So even if you're not in the digital economy and the attention economy is not something that you're able to wrap your head around yet, this is also happening offline too, right? The online and the offline worlds are not separate anymore. Even if you are chronically offline 99% of your life and you maybe use AI, like you ask ChatGPT questions, remember ChatGPT is even pulling from a data set that is not strictly offline. That in and of itself is creating a funnel between online and offline, right? I've driven the point home so much and I've probably repeated a lot of points now. I'm going to shut up. Much love. Follow, subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Instagram, Trina Nuance. All right.